BBC had a go at solving these problems. They admitted to losing £98 million on making it work. The true figure is way, way, way high. And this is a statement from the Director General of the BBC, basically saying, I'm very sorry we lost all that money, because it's license fee funded, so it's my money. And basically, they scrapped the whole project because it became too complicated and it didn't work. And people, software developers like myself, were solving the problems quicker than they could solve it internally. But the whole idea was to make everything tableless from the beginning to end. And I know the true figure is way, way more than the 98 million pounds they admitted to losing lives. Eventually, they even lied in Parliament about it. It was so embarrassing. Because these are not simple problems to solve. Yes? So even the BBC, with all its resources and all its time, failed to do it. And they said, basically, we're writing off the whole project. That's the prudent thing to do. We think it's better to close it now rather than waste more money and develop it further. It was an ambitious project when we started in 2008. The intention was to build a new digital production tool to allow all teams to develop, create, share and manage content digitally. Basically what we're talking about today. Yeah? So they failed. And they failed gave me an opportunity because I developed another program. Let's just try and go to our keynote and we'll see if I can get the movies later. So NASCAR was a very big project. It was a brand new project. They produced vast amounts of material every week, and it was an archive project. Now, one of the things that when I first went over there, I said, okay, what do you do with your material when you've shot it? And they spent 2 years talking about what codec to use. Because some codecs are bigger. And some guys can't see the difference between 4K and H.264 about this big. It looks the same to them. But it has huge implications for storage. When you're archiving, you have to make these decisions. What quality shall we archive at? If you go for the highest quality out there, the files are this big, you're going to need more memory. Because you're going to need more storage. If you do it this big, you think you're a very good guy, because you don't need so much storage and you're very clever, but you've lost quality, which we can never regain. Because when those tapes are finished, right? So this is a constant problem everywhere you go. Now, NASCAR talked about it for 2 years, and they came up with 2 decisions. It took them 2 years to design ProRes 422. It was good enough. We could have told them that in 10 minutes. But they have a big process, and government organizations and big broadcasters have process. So it took them 2 years to decide what most of the market knew already. The other thing was, they were going to archive. I said, what do you go to archive? And they said, everything. I said, very good. That makes life simple. Because we can automate. A lot of people decide, oh, let's choose what we need to archive. And that becomes another problem because we have to select materials. Who's got to select when and where what we keep? This is another problem. But in NASCAR, they solved it. We archive everything. The reason they archived everything, no one could decide what to keep. No one knew what to keep. And my friend Scott there, who was in charge of the archive project, and it was a strange project in that the archivist was in charge of the whole project because they were archiving everything. And he said, let history be my judge. We just keep everything. I can't get this wrong if I keep everything. But there were cost implications. And still are cost implications to keeping everything. But it made my job easier because we could automate, because everything that came in, we archived. Yeah? So, how do we find stuff? And they're very, very good at finding stuff. Well, this is my discovery process. Talking to the clients. And they tend to lie. Now, what do I mean by that? Organizations typically do not know everything about the organisation. So you talk to one guy and he says, we do it like this. Then you go and talk to someone else and says, no, well, we only do that sometimes. And the organisation itself doesn't always know what's going on, right? And it's just because some guys do this and they think that's the whole world, and other guys do this and they think that's the whole world. The truth is you have to talk to them all. And sometimes you go back and say, it doesn't work the way you think it is. But they're not really like that, actually. They just don't know. So we call it discovery. We find out really what's going on in the organisation, really what people need to keep. Often they don't know themselves and they ask you to decide. And you go, well, I don't. And this is typical. Yeah. Okay. So if I could get my little film to work, and I'll try it a bit later, and I'll show you later tomorrow. What you see is what I did in Volvo. What we implemented there was basically centralised interest. If I had my little film, you have a guy comes with his tapes, and he comes to the hole in the wall and he says, here's my tape. And he has to fill in a form, because we need to know what this tape is. He gives the form and he gives the tape. And somebody else digitizes it, because this is typical of how we've solved the problem. We do not trust all of you to put the stuff in the right folder and give it the right name. So we made it a special job. Now, in my latest thinking, which is why I began at the end, if I'm in the cloud, I've got to embrace the notion it's coming in from everywhere. It can't come in just from one place, because you can all be at home on your laptops and you can be moving data into my data center. So it's coming from lots of different angles. Now, if it's so important we get it in the right place, we've got to figure out ways of getting it in the right place for everybody. And the only way we can really approach that is to keep things simple, which is really the sort of arc of my journey, is figuring out what's really important and what isn't as important. Yeah? And when I go on to the Olympics, figuring that out was the complete reverse of my thinking. So in NASCAR, they have 100 robbers. I thought this sent me down the wrong track because it was the first really big race I got in this field. They were so big, it was so new, it basically gave me gave us a reputation in the United States. Well, the United States is one of those places where they don't want being second, they want to be first in everything. They're always in a hurry. And they got this idea, give me money, I'll solve your problems. Get me the guy, give you more money, who will solve the problems. And it isn't always about more money. It's just looking at how it works. But it sent me down the wrong track because I was concentrating on media assets. Media, because that's what we were ingesting, that's what we were looking for. When we got the system working, I could type in Indianapolis 500, 2010, lap 50, Kyle Busch, spin. And I could pull up every camera. And that could be, they had 78 cameras on track, and now they have every camera, 4 cameras in every car, maybe 20, 30 cars in every race. I could pull up all of that footage, and I could see a crash from every angle under the sun. We thought we were great. Victory. It was brilliant. We could find anything. But it took 100 people to do this logging, because it was all typing stuff in. Now, too much work for most people. So we're going to have another system. We're going to have something else, because most organizations cannot actually afford that. As I say, it's text-based. But they did because they make money out of it. They make a lot of money, very, very profitable. So they need it. Now, schemas, yeah. I alluded to what we call tagging and bagging. Tagging is a schema. Now, schemas are basically, we figured out pretty quickly that people are very good at spelling. Boats and boots, typos. So we thought we could solve this by having drop-down lists. And in the scheme, this is a schema, so we had one drop-down list of all of the NASCAR drivers. This was maybe 10,000 entries, because it went back a lot of time. But we put filters, we were very clever, we did what computers do best, we filtered lists and did this. But then that wasn't enough. By the time I finished with Scott Reinhardt there, we had 250 fields with hundreds and hundreds of entries in each field. Now we could click on them and drop down, we could do it quick, and I sat with the longest for nearly 2 weeks trying to take every keystroke I could out of the equation. In this little movie, which I can't play, which we'll get later, you see that process going on. But it was complicated. And it sent me down the wrong track. I don't think nowadays that we need as much information as that. But Scott was an archivist, he wanted all this detailed information. And I managed to get information out of the editors and the producers because they were the ones who would select the interesting material. Nowadays it costs virtually nothing to shoot because it's an SSD drive or a CF card. So people shoot and shoot and shoot. Most of it isn't well keeping. It's just